Okay, so let's see how this is done. It's a two-part process. We need to trigger our event, and we also have to register a subscriber for our event. For the registering of the subscriber, we're going to use our existing subscriber class. We're going to trigger it in the controller that already exists inside of our blind date module. Okay, so let's jump to the resource pack directory. And what we're going to do is open up blinddatecontroller.php, adding an event. So we're going to do this first. I'm going to close this out. So I'm going to go to blind date controller and let's compare the code. So in PHP Storm, what I'm doing is copying to the clipboard and then doing a keyboard shortcut to compare to the clipboard. I'm going to skip this use up here and let's go down to the content area. So what our event is going to do, it's a little bit contrived, but the idea is that we're going to pass a string into the event and then allow any other module to adjust that string before it comes back and gets printed out to the page. So you can imagine this string being a render array or an array of some other kind or an object. We're just using a string because it will be easy to see the changes as they occur. So what we're going to do to trigger the event in this first step, this is going to be a two-part process, but in this first step, we're going to use GenericEvent, which is supplied to us through Symfony. If we don't want to create an event class like we did in the Symfony videos, then we can use GenericEvent, and that will allow us to just pass in some arbitrary values and allow the event to occur and all of the subscribers to get processed, but it skips the step of having our custom event class. Now in the next step, we'll actually create that custom event class, but using GenericEvent can be handy if you need something quick and dirty. Now GenericEvent takes two arguments. The first is subject, and the subject would usually be an object that includes methods that you might use inside of the subscribers to the event. So this is going to get passed in through the event and can be used. It might also contain properties that could be adjusted as well. So there would be getters and setters and things like that. In this case, we just have a simple string. So subject right now is going to be an empty string. Arguments is where we're going to put our adjustable string here. So we're setting arguments as an array, and we're putting one item in that array. The key is going to be string. The value is this is the default string. This is the default, and if no other subscribers adjust the string, this is what would get returned and used. So we're passing these arguments in as the second parameter to GenericEvent. In the next step, what we're going to do is call the event dispatcher. So we get that as a service. Event dispatcher is the same thing that we used in the Symfony videos. It's the core Symfony event dispatcher class. And then we're going to dispatch the event. So I'm going to scroll over here. We're going to call the event blinddate.notableEvent. And this is the name that subscribers can use to subscribe to the event. And then we're going to pass in the event object. Now again, the event object was generated right here with the GenericEvent class. The event is manipulated by reference. So by the time that this dispatching is complete, any adjustments that have been made to the event variable are made to it here too, so we can use it right here to get an argument. So if we look at the GenericEvent class, I'm going to go ahead and jump to it by doing a command click, and we look at the signature here. I'm going to click on structure. You see how there's the set argument and get argument methods. And what we want to do is get an argument, so we're going to do that instead of directly accessing that argument. So I'm going to jump back over to our comparison here. So this get argument is going to allow us to grab the string. Now, as this runs as is, because there's no subscribers, we're going to get this default value, which is this is the default string. And this string we're then going to use, if we scroll down inside of our markup here, if we scroll over, you can see string being added at the end here of our text. I'm going to scroll back over. Now, if we just use this code without adding our use statement, we would get an error saying, hey, we can't find GenericEvent. So what you could do is search for the GenericEvent class inside the Drupal code base to see if there's any examples of a use statement. If not, then you can search the Symfony code base and see what the full namespace is and add it in here. Okay, I'm going to exit out of this file comparison, and I'm going to copy step 21 here. I'm going to copy the entire code, and I'm going to paste it in over blinddatecontroller.php and save it. So at this point, we should see this extra string here showing up inside of our markup on the blind date page. Now, the one thing that we need to do in order to see this content is make sure that we're not redirecting away from it. So I'm going to go into blind date subscriber and comment out these events. So we're not going to do any redirect. However, if we refresh this in the browser on the blind date page, we're going to get an error. And the reason is, if we jump back to the browser here, is because we're returning this events, but events doesn't actually exist. So what we need to do is establish this events array at the top here. So we'll add events equals array, and this should return at least the proper structure for the events here. So we're going to refresh the page here, and you can see at the very end here we have this is the default string.